I'd like to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panel, judges. We agree with the opposition that sometimes animals suffer terribly in their nature environment. And we also have to care about animals where they suffer terribly in their nature environment. We agree with the fact that not all animals have a happy life in their nature environment. However, we believe that their nature environment, even if they suffer terribly, is still the most ideal environment for them to grow up and to develop in a sustainable way. So first of all, we have two arguments to deliver in today's debate. First of all, we'd like to say that the environment, their nature environment where they were born is the one that is like the most ideal and suitable for them to develop and grow. This is because that in their environment, even though they may suffer terribly from other threats, they won't lose their instinct, and their instinct will be able to develop. However, in an environment where we create for them, when we like cancel out all the threats for them, we will also cancel out the thing that like their instinct, because they won't have to use their instinct for any purpose. For example, let's take an animal, for example. They suffer terribly in their nature environment. They suffer from threats, they suffer from anything. However, when we put them in an environment where we just like make everything safe and comfortable for them, they won't have to use any skills and environment, and they will just become something that's just like unresponsive. They won't have to engage with anything, and just like everything is provided for them, and they will lose their instinct. And also the nature environment will like they can't go back to their nature environment, but they will be dependent on human. Our second argument will be about how not every country have enough resources to create an environment where it's quality enough for all the animals to live in. For example, let's take Africa, for example. There are many like poor countries in there. Many countries, they don't even have enough like resources to support human, not to mention supporting and creating a whole large environment that's suitable for like a lot of animals, right? So if we take those countries, for example, and they can't like support their animals, they can't create an environment for the animal, then well, in those countries, animal will still suffer in the wild. However, in other countries with enough resources, such as like rich country, then they will create an environment for the animal, and they will put the animal in there. And this creates like the inequality, and it creates unequal environment between animals around the world in different regions. For example, animal in Africa, they have to live in their nature environment, and they suffer in there. However, in other richer countries, for example, in Europe, they have an environment where it's like human created, and therefore they live in the environment in there. And animals in different regions in the world, they will be different. It will create a even like deeper, wider gap between the animals, because some animals live in an environment where it's human created, and some animals live in their nature environment in the wild. And it creates like the inequality between the development of different species in the world. And we believe that like many problems would occur when we create an environment for them that would like still create more problem, and they would still have like consequences, such as like if they live in those environment, they won't have like enough space. They will have to live in a crowded space, because we won't have like enough space to provide for them. And with all the reasons above, I'm more than proud to propose. Thank you.
Hello, dear participants, the opposing team, and the adjudicators. I'm Malika, and I'm the first speaker of our team. Mike will be the second speaker, and Tilly will be the third speaker. And today we're going to discuss why we should not conserve the wilderness, even if animals suffer in their natural environment. First, I would like to define what is wild animal suffering. It is the suffering that is experienced by non-human animals' activities living outside of direct human control, and due to harm such as diseases, injury, starvation, weather conditions, and natural disasters, as well as killings by other animals. These are all factors of wild animal suffering. And firstly, why would animals suffer in their natural environment if it is natural? They only suffer because they interfere with human activity, such as deforestation and poaching, but this is already outside of their natural environment. And if talk about factors that us human cannot control, for example, animal diseases and killings by other animals, then it is their natural, and we shall not mess with their evolution. And as the opposing team already mentioned, animals, a natural environment is the best for them. And humans were once closer to animals in our mental capacity and driven by our basic instincts to eat, mate, and protect the youngers, and etc. So nature needs to be allowed to develop without the interference of humanity. And who knows how animals will evolve in the future. Humans should not be allowed to play God with the environment around them. By taking up more wilderness, we further limit the amount of land and resources wild animals may have, and thus causing infighting, starvation, and potentially dehydration for several species. And this would in no way decrease their suffering. And the mental well-being of animals is greatly harmed by captivity. Many animals will self-mutilate due to the stress of captivity. And if they suffer there, we can't ethically keep them. And that does not refute the idea that they suffer in the wild to the point that we can't leave them be. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, my speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. The opposition team had came to this debate with a case full of flaws and unanswered questions. So my speech will be divided into 2 parts. First of all is the rebuttals, and then I would like to move on to my arguments. So they had come up with 2 main arguments. First of all, natural environments are the best for them. So we do not agree because our first speaker has clearly stated that wild animals should ideally be free to live in the wild. Their survival as a species may be threatened on occasion, either naturally or artificially, which means that creating an ideal environment may have been an important technique of protecting animal species from becoming extinct. Next, they had also stated that these animals should not be interfering with humans because of their past actions. We are not trying to hide the actions that humans have been. The negative impact of human have done on the environment. However, in this situation where animals they are being put into a suffering terribly in their natural environment, this is when humans started with their knowledge. They should start to help these species. So, in the struggle against global warming and animal preservation, knowledge is probably our only weapon, and we need to know what will happen and how animals will react in certain scenarios, which means that we can begin to solve the issue of how to conserve these species for future catastrophes by sending in professional animal watchers into these environment. Again, we can also figure out how to safeguard them, which ecosystem they can live in, and which food they're willing to eat to augment their nutrition. Again, this is a win-win situation. Humans are taking careful care of the environment, of the animals, and we are also again helping the environment. So again, no, animals are not. Again, wait. Okay. So we should conserve the wilderness if animals are suffering terribly in their natural environment, because. Wait one moment. So they may be in cages and not in what we would consider the perfect home for these creatures. But let's be honest, these animals are cleaned, fed nutritiously, and even given a roof over their heads, and generally with a piece of their own habitat. It's like being pulled off the street as a hobo and placed into a magnificent home where you are fed every day, you're showered, and and have frequent doctor visits to ensure you're in excellent health. However, you are not allowed to leave this room. So, would you be accepted if anything like this will be happening to you? The answer is probably gonna be no. And with all of that, we are more than proud to propose.
No, we shouldn't conserve animals if they are suffering terribly because we are hurting their natural environment, because animals have been able to live naturally before, and it shouldn't need to change now. The animals need to adapt to their environment to survive, and if we are locking them up, they are not going to have the same set of skills they had to survive before. We would be destroying food webs and chains, and this would in turn affect us as humans and could damage how we live our everyday-to-day lives. The food webs have a chain-like structure, and if we are conserving these animals, how do we know that this isn't going to be affected greatly? And when we have started conserving the animals, there is no going back, and henceforth we may have destroyed the food web, therefore hurting the human species. Humans are unfortunately the only problem with suffering of animals, with poaching, which animals have no control over, and without the poaching there would be no change in the animal's lifespan. Humans have evolved past animals ever since we became a species. Although animals have evolved, the gradual and rapid rate that human beings have evolved is much greater than that of animals, and therefore we should not be held accountable for the well-being and conservation of animals, and unfortunately we have been in the past accountable for the destruction of species and their extinctions, further adding the point of no need for animals to be conserved. Nature needs to be able to be developed by itself because they have done that all their life, and why do we need to intervene if there has been no problem with the animal's life cycle in the first place? You might say that animals can be kept safe in these environments, but really are we just damaging the animal's lifespan even more than what they were living their life prior to their conservation? Who knows how animals will evolve in the future, and if we keep them in our natural environment and don't harm their life, animals in the future may not need any help from humans at all and will be able to live their life correctly, organizing the food chain and web so that nothing in affecting is in the future. By taking up further land for conserving animals, we are getting rid of further agricultural land and resources, and for the animals, we are cutting off the natural side of things of getting their own resources. This will cause infighting, starvation, and suffering for the animals. This also may happen if we do not conserve the animals, but what is the difference if we do or not then? Mental health thing is affected in captivity, and if we're going to suffer in captivity, if they're going to suffer in captivity, why is it any different to suffering in their natural environment, where they would have had a better chance of living happily than stuck in a human-made environment with no potential threat or spontaneous action? Animals have lived in their environment their whole life with no problem. Why should we change this now? Extinction is a large part of what weighs up the conversation, but extinction is a natural part of life, and we should not interfere with the destruction of a species. Animals have to live in their natural environment because we do not know entirely on what certain treatment they may use, and that is not ours to speak upon or change. Animals should definitely not be kept under conservation to protect them, even if they are suffering terribly. And why now are we only looking into this? Why not hundreds of years ago? Animals have no need for human help, and if the species are going extinct, we do not need to change that upon our arrogant selves and need to change everything that the human race becomes upon.
Yes. My speech will begin in 3, 2, 1. So the second speaker of the opposition team had stated many arguments without being able to develop them with evidence and mechanism. First of all, they have stated that natural environments are the best for them. We do not disagree with this argument. However, in the scenario of the natural environment being in a critical condition, when animals are suffering terribly in their natural environment, this does not seem to be the best case scenario, which means that the animals should be preserved and they need help from human beings. Next, they have also stated that these animals should not be interfering with human. Again, I had already our second speaker had already rebutted this argument, which means and again, they had stated that nature needed to be able to help adapt to themselves. This connected with their last argument, which is that they are suffering, which means that that the cycle of life has been happening for a long time, which means that if this is just one of the catastrophes that have been happening many times across the animal's life. So, however, I would like to say that keeping them in their natural environments means that we are putting them into danger and we have the capability to help them, however, we refuse to help. So they had stated that if we haven't been helping them and we have been poaching and killing them for all of these times, why now that we are starting to help them? The answer is now though, because we now have the technology and have the knowledge to be able to help them. We had already stated that, first of all, supporting worldwide breeding programs, particularly for endangered species, is one of the most significant and current tasks of the human involvement in the animal world. And also, we had also stated that it is a win-win situation because right now in the natural environment, animals are suffering, which means that we are trying to help them. We are helping them by taking care of them, supporting them with the amount of food, supporting them with shelter, which they are now desperately needing. Again, as the motion has clearly stated, animals are suffering terribly in their natural environment. Considering two things, if we they can either be suffering in captivity as the opposition have been stating, or they can be suffering in nature, just like they have been doing like all this time. So let's talk about their best case scenario, where a lot of species will be able to survive this catastrophe and then live on with their lives. However, there will be many species who will be extinct and fighting the extinction of animals have been one of humans' main goals and in humanity. And talking about suffering in captivity, the thing is we are not keeping them in this cage of iron and bars without letting them outside. We are creating an environment where things look almost as if it is in natural environment. And however, we are able to keep track with everything that they are doing. And with all of that, we are more than proud to propose.
Okay, so the affirmative team come up with the idea of animals need help from human being and human knowledge. So let me remind you of how animals have been surviving through all the hardest time in this world, in the earth. They have been through the ice age. They have gone through the meteoroid, which lead to the extinction of dinosaur, but they're still living, they're still surviving until now. So there's no reason why animals need the help of humans. And moreover, you said human with the knowledge can help the animals, but how can the human being have their knowledge from? They do observation to find how the animals is living. However, it's just the surface of the iceberg. The animals have been surviving their own life for millions of years. Humans just started to doing research on them for about like a decade. They have no idea about what animals is doing. Moreover, people say they are conserving the animals, but what they are doing is actually just lock them into a cage, and it's have a specifically name called zoo. They just lock them in a case and grow some trees in there and doing like some small string and say it's the new environment for the animals. And you know, as we have said, the animals just lose their sense of the wild and they scare human being. They listen to human, so they're not wild animals anymore. They are just like our pets. And finally, and let me remind you again, suffering definition is they are suffering from the natural factors, not from human being factors. And they have been surviving for the whole millions of years. And let me take an example. You said there are a lot of animals exchanged without the human help. But do you know the white hippo? The human being find the last two white hippo in this world and put them in a case. And finally, they still die. They don't grow anymore. They still distinct. Therefore, we can see that with the human help, there's still nothing. There's nothing happen. There's nothing matter. It doesn't change. If it is distinct, it's still distinct. Human can do nothing, and I can confirm again our argument that wildlife, the wilderness, is the best environment for wild animals. Thank you, and that's it.